Hi everyone, welcome. The plan for today is to check in and feed this pair of European nightcrawler worm bins. They're 139 days in service today, and it's been 14 days since we last checked in on them. We sort of classified that last feeding as a generous, large feeding, although when I watched the video again, it didn't seem so terribly generous. Well, hopefully they're ready for more. There was some pear, there was some cabbage, there was some strawberry. They had all kinds of really good stuff in there, so I wouldn't be too surprised to find very little, if any, leftovers of it. Well, let's quit speculating. Let's get the systems up on the bench, see how they did, and then give them more. The lovely feast I have in store for them today is, I would say, just from its weight, probably a pretty generous one. Again, if in fact what I gave them last time was in fact generous. The stuff that I laid out on the top surface last time is those really lightweight pieces of paper that the individually wrapped toilet paper rolls are in, and they're showing up a little bit here as leftovers. I guess I think it was folded over or something. It seems like it's holding up. Except where we fed, right down the middle. A lot of activity there, not too surprising. So I've actually got two more of those out here to lay down as our replacement top covers. And the stuff I wanted to use as bedding is a whole bunch of napkin. Well, it's really just 4 napkins, but those napkins are so big, they somehow seem to me like they are more than just a single napkin. I suppose it's kind of good that they're going in dry. They could suck up some of this moisture. Last time too, I made reference to how the systems felt quite damp. Usually I save tilling up the outer edges for last, but sometimes I attempt to break my habits and patterns by consciously doing it differently than that way. That's what we're doing now. We're just kind of giving the outer edges a little bit of a tilling up. You know, I sometimes wonder if the outer edges are interesting to check in after the feeding, perhaps because you've made such a disruption first going to the center to clear out a space to give them their food that you've pretty much jammed the entire population that was occupying the center out to both edges, sort of resulting in perhaps a higher concentration of worms throughout the material. Once you make your way out there later, I don't know. If it is true, then I'm glad that that's my method, because it makes for a more interesting worm spotting adventure. Although it's kind of like double disruption for the poor wormies if you think about it. Alright, we've tiptoed around the feeding zones enough. We've given a good aeration to the outer edges. Now we get to see how they did with that stuff we gave them last time. There was a pear that I cut in 4 quarters. Boy, look at all that. So each system pretty much got like a half of a pear. Yeah, I think I named off all the stuff we used last time. Perhaps I didn't mention the cauliflower. There was some cauliflower leaves too. Alright, look at that. Man, I had a feeling that there was going to be a mob scene in these feeding zones. And there certainly is. There's wormies everywhere. Awesome. I guess what I talked about earlier, that whole thing of making a disruption and kind of corralling worms into a certain space, I guess that's what we ended up doing, was we disturbed them on the outer edges, making the probably already heavily populated feeding zones perhaps even that much more populated. So we're coming up with all these little hacks here, stuff that I probably should have figured out years ago. So yeah, it's no surprise that this feeding zone is also jam-packed with wormies, all kind of still working down what remains of the last meal, presumably, but I don't see anything that I can identify. Well, maybe a leaf, but not much. Alright, so yeah, you know, even after you fold or unfold one of these napkins completely, it's still 3 layers stacked on top of each other. One, I can already see them coming apart, 2 and 3. So there is a tremendous amount of paper in each of these napkins. But I don't always want to take the time to, you know, dissect each one that way. Although I guess getting it down to that thinnest, you know, layer might be a good thing. It just feels like a time-consuming thing. And there's probably a good technique to it, which I still have yet to master. And well, you know what? Maybe we assume that this one hardly got used, resulting in its layers being quite neatly stuck together still, unlike this one might have already had its layers disrupted from being jammed together by being used to wipe someone's mouth a couple times. And this stuff looks like the makings of a cauliflower soup, if you ask me. I believe cauliflower was actually some of the stuff, the leaves and stems from it, is what we gave them last time. I see celery, I see carrots, other things that make the soups delicious. And let's attempt to be fair as we divvy up the delicious portion to the 2 systems. Let's not forget to add the coffee. Yum yum. And you know, I'm not even done with that, because where those 2 huge luxurious napkins came from, well, there's even more. But you know what, before we cover up the feeding zone, yeah, you know, I'm substituting. Usually I'll just put down my shredded paper cardboard prepared bedding as a foundation, and then as a top cover for feedings. Well, today the napkin's doing the same thing. Let's give them some grit too. Pulverized eggshell, that's what I use as grit. Give it a little shot. And that other stuff that I sprinkled in, that was worm chow. Let's kind of burrito wrap this meal here for them. Putting that napkin into a spot that's gonna, I think, pretty much result in it getting about the maximum amount of traffic as you can stir up in a worm bin. Oh boy, that was a fun check-in, and boy oh boy, are there lots and lots of worms living in here. They gotta love this moisture, and you know, even though I'm putting in 2 nice big totally dry napkins that probably have the potential to suck a good bit of moisture into themselves, I think we're still going to be a-okay from a moisture perspective in here. I mean, when I first lifted the systems, I guess relative to how little material appears to be in it when you first glance into them from above, seems like there's not too much stuff in here, but when you lift it, it's like, wow, they're heavy. So they've got to be laden with a good bit of moisture content, and that, I believe, is probably what makes it a spot that the worms are very happy to be in. So we're marking our feeding zones, as we do traditionally. And like I said earlier, I've got these thin tissue-like papers, and I guess next time we come back in here, it's probably going to be more of the same. You know, they're probably going to produce heavy traffic right over the feeding zone, creating a lot of wear and tear on anything above it or around it. You know, say with dampness like this in these systems, I don't even have to be that careful about how thoroughly I cover up. However, there's no reason to let things dry. I might as well be careful and make sure I've covered things up thoroughly and let the systems hang on to the moisture. It'll only do them good. So that's it for the video, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.